All right, everyone, we're back, joined again by Bulge. Bulge, how are you
Hello, everyone.
bulging? How are you
I,
bulging?
I am bulging very well. I'm doing good. I apparently watched the wrong version of a movie, but I enjoyed myself despite my criticisms of it. And we're now going to probably have a disagreement over its overrated or correctly rated status, is what I understood from our pre-recording conversation.
So this is an awkward introduction to saying that me and Bulge are going to discuss Donnie Darko today. And
Yes.
we literally just discovered that I just discovered that I made a mistake and didn't warn Bulge to not watch the director's cut and to watch the theatrical cut of the film, which is hilarious because that's actually a whole thing in the fandom of this film is if you love the film, which one do you love? I am clearly in the camp of theatrical cut. I do think Bulge you would have had fewer. Well, we'll see. I think you would have had fewer criticisms.
I would have. I would
Had
have
you? Yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
undoubtedly, because the director's vision kind of sucks ass.
Well,
Like you
as
didn't like
yeah,
I actually don't understand him trying to explain the metaphysics of it because he's obviously not qualified to do
yeah.
that.
You
It's
should.
just
Well,
kind of
as you
nonsense
just said before the we started recording, you should always show and not tell, unless you're H.P. Lovecraft. He's the only one who can get away with that.
because
Uh,
he tells really well. And
yeah,
the
yeah,
problem
yeah.
with this movie is that it doesn't what it does tell it doesn't do well, but when it shows, it's actually really good. Like the sibling, like
Yep.
just to start with, like it very quickly establishes the sibling and family dynamic just through dialogue and show and tell. Like
Well, and
immediately you can get like the slow motion, like just to take the beginning one of the opening shots after Donnie wakes up and rides on his bike, the father putting the lawnmower, not the lawnmower,
blowing the leaves. Yeah,
the
leaf
leaf
blower. Yeah,
blower into like his daughter's face, and they're both kind of laughing as as she walks off. Was it his daughter or his wife? I
daughter,
forget now.
daughter.
No,
Yeah.
but his daughter's face, and they kind of laugh it off, and he kind of smiles in this sort of grumpy old man way. Great
Well,
acting, by the way,
well,
from both
yeah.
there.
I gotta say though,
It's very good.
again,
No dialogue even at that point. Literally zero words have
hopefully
been exchanged.
so hopefully we'll do a quick overview of what actually happens in the movie, just so people, again, spoilers abound, but to remind people. But yeah, I gotta say, first and foremost, Bulge, your opinion of this movie is making me seriously question your commitment to sparkle motion. So just I
So
yeah, um, I think I got that quote right. I'm like, did I get that quote right?
yeah,
I think that's what it is. Yeah,
I
yeah,
figured it's sparkle motion.
yeah. Um,
Lots of great acting, even when I thought like even when
yeah,
part of my criticism is literally that character in Cunningham
yeah.
because they're kind of like because I think if the thesis was slightly more understated, they would have a type of teacher dead to rights.
Yeah.
But again, this is very Gen X, early 2000s, late 90s. There is a sort of overstatement until like the person becomes almost like a what is the name? A flanderized version of
Yeah,
the
something like that.
character.
Yeah.
There's something like that going on with two characters where especially I mentioned this to you in text. There's a lot of Holden Caulfield in Donnie Darko, and the movie is not completely unaware of it, but it's not as aware of it as Catcher in the Rye is. Or Catcher,
I
there's
confess,
a whole ironic
you're
tragedy to it.
you're the literary type here.
Yeah, I
I
very
am
much
just
am.
the fan type. I have not read Catcher in the Rye, so I
You
confess.
would I don't know your teen it really depends on how you lived your teenage years, but it's one of those books that if you read it in high school, you'll if it's got you dead to
I
rights,
spent
which it had in my case, you will hate it
I spent
because
a
it's
lot of
got you dead
time.
to rights.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in high school because it was the early 2000s. Speaking of early 2000s, on the internet because I didn't have high-speed internet at home, and I was looking up grammars of various languages. That was my so I guess I was simultaneously a
You had your
nerd.
little spurts
Well, I
obsession.
was spurging out in the library, but then I was also playing football and lacrosse. So I was a weird, I hung out with both jocks and nerds because I was both, and I did, and because of that, nobody knew what to do with me. They still don't know what to do with me. I'm a jock nerd, a jerd. So
I just always been able to get along with everyone, even when I haven't. I just played tennis and no one else in my school did. But even
tennis.
then, I managed to get along with everyone fine. But
Yeah.
there's a certain like Donnie when Donnie's like he's a fake, they're all lying or whatever. That is pretty much straight out of Catcher in the Rye, except Catcher in the Rye is very much like you have like there is a miscommunication going on and both parties are at fault in some
Right.
way. But
Okay.
Caulfield is not a bad guy. He's not like, oh, he's just an angsty teenager and he has to get over. It's like, no, no, no. His heart is kind of in the right place, despite all his misunderstanding of the world, despite him not being experienced. His heart, actually, despite everything, is in the right place. And there is some degree of phoniness in the adults, because
Yeah.
phony is a word used very much in Catcher in the Rye. But they're not monsters. Even the prostitute he contracts him and goes in a diatribe against prostitution, which I don't disagree with the diatribe specifically, but it feels a little bit inappropriate. And he's kind of a loser. He kind of
Yeah.
comes off as a loser, but his heart is still kind of in the right place. Even when he does these kind of cringe nerd things.
Well,
And
so
Donnie has a bit of that as well.
yeah,
But
for sure.
at the same time, the adults he is railing against are literally comedically evil.
Yeah.
So there is I feel that undermines a lot of the thematic, I don't know if relevance, but it makes it look way more over the top and less applicable than it should be. Because it's a way stronger movie if Cunningham doesn't we should get into the events, but if one of the
Yeah.
characters, Cunningham,
Let's
doesn't
give
have
the overview.
literally a pedophile porn dungeon underneath his house, I
Yeah.
actually think it's a stronger movie.
Uh,
And if
well,
I forget her name, but the Sparkle Motion mother, if she isn't comedically obsessed with her daughter's success or whatever as a vicarious thing for her own, and if it had also, this is also a problem with Catcher in the Rye, but it's kind of solved because it's first person from a teenager's perspective. If the English teacher had her own sort of principles, but we never learn her principles beyond aesthetics and literature matter, beyond that, we never really learn anything about why she considers good literature good, or why good literature is even important. There is almost never this point. She kind of just uses a plot tool for the narrative to discuss itself in her English class, which is awesome. I actually really like that. I actually think it's appropriate use of English teachers in movies. But there is a sort of issue with that in a broader thematic network. But yeah, please, we should actually summarize. Do you want me to do the metaphysics, or should you do the theatrical cut summarization and
I'll
I
I'll do
don't
the.
speak of the metaphysics?
Well, we'll get into the metaphysics in a bit here. So it takes place late 80s, leading up to Hell
88,
88, leading up to Hell.
October 88.
Well, I guess so. The movie's about a lot of things, and again, there's two
Yep.
different cuts running around there, but a lot of it has to do with um
It's a
this is
coming of age story at the
so
heart.
so yeah, decisions. It's a coming of age story, but also has to do with decisions, whether or not you get second chances to fix your mistakes. And if you were to get a second chance to fix your mistakes, or maybe even a third or a fourth chance, depending on which version of the movie you watch, it's sort of implied in the theatrical cut that maybe he's tried this a few times. Um,
That is not at all implied
yeah,
in the director's
yeah,
cut. Holy shit, dude.
yeah.
Which would have been way cooler. That's
It
actually
is
one of my
cooler.
complaints with the movie is that I won't get into the metaphysics. So my
Yeah.
complaint would require me to
So
continue.
has to do with titular character Donnie Darko is a teenager is supposed to be in and around, I think, Washington or DC or Virginia somewhere, but it clearly is shot in Los Angeles, which is fine. And
Virginia suburbs. It
yeah, it's
looks
suburbs, clearly shot in LA.
I've
That's
been
fine.
a lot in McLean County in Virginia because one of my cousins lives there. So it very much reminds me of some of the areas nearby. That's one of the
Okay, so
suburbs around
LA stands in
DC.
well, apparently, for to me, it just looks like LA. But
It does. You can tell by the vegetation, but
yeah,
aside from that, the homes are similar, but the
yeah,
vegetation is
very
very
wasp.
distinct.
Very wasp.
Yeah, very wasp.
Yeah. And Donnie Darko is let's say a very intelligent but somewhat troubled youth who receives visions from Frank, his sort of extraplanar bunny man. We'll get back into bunny men in 2 seconds here.
Hmm.
Friend. that there's a prophecy of doom and destruction.
You
He
have 28 days and
28
like
days. He's
what something
prone,
hours and something minutes and something
yeah,
seconds until the world ends.
prone to sleepwalking, which initially saves his life. In that there is a
And that was probably not even his normal sleepwalking, but Frank himself,
yeah, there's
if my interpretation is correct.
a rogue airplane engine that crashes in their house would have killed him, does not kill him because he's sleeping on the golf course.
It would
Uh,
have crashed into his room,
yeah,
but he was not in his room because he was sleepwalking outside into a
yeah,
golf course.
yeah, and so it kind of goes on from there. And so I mean, it's at least the theatrical cut, the canonical version. We see, even holy crap, Bulge, even when it comes to movies, you and we have different canons. We really
Yeah, that's true.
Protestant Catholic just thing is, even in, like, yeah, well, in our canon it's a little different. Well, in our canon we have disagreements about this.
The reason why I hate it, it's all in the Book of Tobit. You guys don't have it
you
canonized, and
know,
you should really
here's the
read
thing
it.
about,
It's
okay,
all in Tobit.
here's an aside, because I just got done talking to Pause. By the way, everyone, I'm going to be I'll be a regular fixture on the Scarlet Thread Society
Hell
uh,
yeah.
Patreon. Go check it out. I'll link to it probably somewhere. The previous episode I did most recently on the show here was with Pause. We just got done talking about woo stuff, so I'll say this is my thing with Tobit. Okay, it's a cool story about fish exorcisms, but I don't know what it has to say about Jesus. So that's
It
my
doesn't have, no, it doesn't have, I'll be honest, I just really enjoy the bird shit my eyes and now I'm blind.
blind. And
That's
yeah, yeah,
really, it's a cool dragon slaying story, basically. That's what it is at the
it's
heart of
Tobit. The
it.
Book of Tobit is Ghostbusters in the Bible, is basically what it is.
And it's kind of cool,
It's
but
cool.
I will be honest, from a object from a non-religious standpoint, from someone who's like an alien comes in, let's say an alien who's like blessed with like rationality, whatever, and like he finds out our holy canon, he'd be like, "Whoa, Tobit, really?"
Yeah, yeah,
I get that. I
yeah.
understand from an outsider viewpoint. It's like, really, that one?
Yeah. Um.
I get
So,
it.
we'll go from. I think this is probably enough of an intro to the story.
I
Spoiler.
can summarize the rest of the story very briefly if you want.
Yeah,
Spoilers
well, we can
included.
do that. Yeah, summarize the rest of it, and then we'll.
So, the entire rest of the story, I'm not going to talk about the character specifically. We can get into that later. But basically, Donnie is from the director's cut, but in the theatrical cut, possibly manipulated by events around him to get to a decision to restore things to how they should be. I don't know how it plays out in the theatrical cut, but it seems to me it doesn't even seem to me, it is explicitly spelled out in the director's cut that events around him are manipulated, and people around him, including the dead, such as Frank, who is one of these, are manipulated into sort of guiding him towards a certain path. Yet the movie kind of insists he has a choice. I don't think it works that well narratively in the director's cut. If it had cut some of that content,
In
it would, which is
in
what
the
is missing.
theatrical cut,
Yeah,
he really doesn't have a choice, which for me as a
as
product
well.
felt correct. So I was like,
It
yes,
felt correct.
it felt
It's
correct. No choice. I must do I have a duty to do the thing. I was like, yeah, you really got to reset things. Um,
Yeah, I kind of get that. That's actually it's one of my more minor complaints. It's not that one isn't thematic. I actually kind of agree you shouldn't have a choice. I but I would have preferred the narrative if it like was a choice to go to the cross or not, basically.
right.
Um
I will
mainly
say,
because that becomes more Christian instead of Christ figure, because Christ doesn't have a choice because he is perfect. And
right,
if you are perfect, you don't have a choice but to be perfect.
right.
Whereas like someone like Paul or Peter, they do like a Christian story instead of a Christ story does have a choice of like, well, Peter could turn away from Rome, but he chooses not to and he gets crucified upside down.
Well,
Paul could run away,
you're getting
but
very Gene Wolfe there, and that's fine
yeah,
because
I
I'm
am.
a Gene Wolfe
Okay,
fan. You're
I
getting
am.
very Gene Wolfe here,
I
but yeah,
will. Okay, the
yeah,
rest of it, but he basically guided into resetting things, and
right.
the basic idea why he has to reset things is they are in something has gone wrong with time itself. They
Yep.
are in a tangent universe, which again
Yeah.
is spelled out explicitly in the director's cut to
Oh,
its
it's
own
so bad. You
detriment.
should never spell that
That
out.
sucks so bad,
It's all implied in the
dude.
theatrical version. It's
Yeah,
all
dude, that's
implied.
so,
Yeah.
which is so cool.
Yeah.
It sucked so bad that they spelled it out.
You need to
Um,
rewatch it in the real version.
I really do one
The
day. I
King
need to
James
give it some
version. The
time
only
until,
real
yeah,
version.
the KGV version,
The KGV
KJV
only.
version
The KGV only. Yeah.
for Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
And there is some sort of vague gestures that maybe God is correcting. There's almost a Newtonian universe of this time. Time sort of goes wrong every now and then God corrects it. It's very humorous.
Well, I love the idea that,
but that's basically what happens.
and
People
it's revealed too
and he
that
accepts
Donnie,
his fate.
yeah, he accepts his fate
and grows closer to God in a very vague and ambiguous way, which I kind of like, for a little bit too vague and deist about it, but I kind of like that.
It's not a Christian movie, so you can find Christian themes in
but
it.
It's the
it's not a
closest
Christian
thing
film.
to a Christian movie as a non-Christian movie
Yes,
could kind of be.
Yes, it's pretty close. It gets close. It approaches. One of the things, yeah, so Donnie stays in his room and allows himself to be crushed by the falling plane engine, which is the plane holding in the off universe is the plane holding his mom and his sister. And so in so doing resets everything and saves basically everyone. Kind of, it's sort of unclear how many, but he definitely saves people who would have
he literally saves the universe, because in the director's cut, at least,
it's not that.
It would have consumed the entire
we're going
universe.
with the real version here, theatrical
okay.
version.
I just need to say my experience, and then we can compare notes, which I think is part of this is actually part of the interesting thing here. We're gonna have to compare notes.
Well, we are literally operating.
Goes.
We are literally operating in different universes. We're in parallel.
Yeah, we're operating in different parallel universes. Where I get literal on-screen text telling me about the meta. It's literal on-screen text. I'm not joking.
No. You never do that. Okay, anyhow.
It's not so bad.
It's not your dissertation defense where you have to put up words on the screen and talk about it.
And the metaphysics is so nonsense that it kind of ruined the movie for me, because with 5 minutes of thinking after the movie, I could figure it out. And I just checked online, and apparently everyone who put it together from the director's cut was like, I was right. And like, it's kind of sucks, man.
One of the things I like that it's like, I love the idea because like it's connected to things like stuff I've talked about on other shows too, like psychogeography. I love the idea that you can be haunted by not just places. I mean, he's clearly haunted by places, but he doesn't know why he's Donnie doesn't know why he's haunted by these locations.
Haunted by the future.
Well, because he's haunted by it's very hauntological with an H, a hauntological movie. Mm-hmm. He's haunted by the places and people of the future that have already happened. And he's repeating the cycle. And this is sort of, the movie is the last cycle before he fixes it. And so he doesn't know exactly why, like, these places, initially, he doesn't know why these places, like, important. I feel I'm getting these visions of places I need to go and things I need to do. It's because he's probably in some previous iteration experienced this before. So I love that idea because it has to do with things like
the director's cut.
Deja vu.
Sucks so bad.
Yeah,
it's so much the way you're telling it. The movie is so much better.
Yeah, it has to do with deja vu. And it also, I love the idea that he can be haunted by the ghost of a man he killed, like a man who's like a future dead person is haunting him, which is sort of like this like bizarro world Hamlet situation. Which is
in
like,
a weird way.
It's so, and I don't know if that was explicit on Kelley's part, Richard Kelley, who wrote both versions and should have just kept it with the theatrical release.
Actually, again, originally he wrote the director's cut, and they literally cut out content for the director.
As I've said before,
whoever edited that. I mean, the movie you're describing is so much better. So I have to give my hats off to the editor. You have saved this movie in theaters. You are the reason it is a cult classic.
Sam,
so
we'll give them some credit.
Editor.
Let's give them so Sam Bauer and Eric Strand edited the original take.
Congratulations, brothers! You were because the movie I am being described is way cooler than what I watched. And part of what I watched is because the metaphysics is so nonsensical. Like, you know how Roberta Sparrow, the old woman, was
Yes.
a science
The
teacher in the school.
philosophy of time travel
Yeah,
lady.
the book she wrote, there are pages of it which literally spell out what is happening, which are put on screen for like
Oh,
10 to 20 seconds at a time.
no.
But they are so absolutely batshit insane that I was literally laughing my ass off, thinking, how the hell did this woman get hired to teach science at a school? This is so funny because they are like the artifact is usually made of metal. That is the one that is duplicated in the tangent universe, and the manipulated dead and the manipulated living can time travel and like whatever. It's like that is insane. That is
Well,
crazy talk. You would not get hired for a school if you wrote that book. You would be immediately fired and put in an institution if you
well,
ever wrote this.
I like the idea. Again, I'm not a fan of Derrida, but a broken clock is right twice a day.
I actually am a fan of one of Derrida's students, but he is
So,
a Catholic.
the hauntological part of this too, right? Which connects, I mean, so in writing about hauntology, Derrida explicitly references Hamlet's father's ghost. So there's something kind of cool. There's something very meta happening there. Again, I don't know if that's intentional, but it kind of doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that you can be haunted by a future dead person, I think is great because I think in many ways it's not unique or it's not brave or special to say that we are all haunted by our own impending demise.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but like, it's not that, so the crime has already happened in the future, and it, like all crimes, it must be dealt with and rectified, like sort of eschatologically almost. And so
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie's must fix this problem. And he has to, and again, in the theatrical cut, it's unclear how many times he's gone through this process, this 28-day cycle or whatever it is. It's like a period. It's 28 days. It's a man period. How many times
Mm-hmm.
has he gone through this cycle? Difficult to know. But he gets these hints and flashes of the future he has already lived, which I think, again, just from the theatrical cut perspective, is freaking amazing. It's one of the better, again, the theatrical version is one of the better, let's say, timey-wimey, to borrow a phrase from Doctor Who. One of the better
Mm-hmm.
timey-wimey films I've seen. It goes for me, this one, and then movie starring one of your fellow bead rattlers there, Bulge, Jim Caviezel, Frequency, if you've seen Frequency.
I need to watch Frequency then.
Well, Frequency was written by the same guy who wrote Fallen. So
Oh hell yeah.
we should also include Frequency in our list here. But the idea that like time goes in cycles is maybe kind of like time is a flat circle, quasi-Nietzschean, but the idea too that like it shouldn't go in cycles. Time should not be secular. It can get caught in cycles. We need to break out of cycles. Oftentimes movies or shows will attempt this kind of a story and they kind of fail, or they kind of just don't find a satisfying end point. I find, again, the theatrical version only to be quite satisfying and self-contained. Um, so that's just me. Again, this movie is interesting in that the fan base, people who watch it, either you tend to like it or just not get it. And I really like it, even though I don't totally get it. And I think for some people, it's maybe not tied up. I'm not saying you, Bulge, but for some people, it's maybe not
Mm-hmm.
tied up in a bow as much as they'd like. And they kind of don't like
I
that.
think it's the bow is too tight, if
Oh,
anything.
okay. Yeah, the bow is too
That
tight.
is my
Well,
problem with it.
it's interesting too because it had been a few years since I'd seen it, and I think the last time I watched it, the final season of Twin Peaks had not yet released back in 2018. And so this time watching Donnie Darko, I had seen the 2018 amazing
I have not seen
final
that. I need to
season of,
finish Twin
yeah.
Peaks, brother.
So because it's clear to me that Kelly is very consciously or subconsciously is very influenced by David Lynch. Um, in framing, in some of the staging, in some of the dialogue, but really more like thematically. This idea of what is time really? How does time work? Does time function differently for different people and or in different locations is something that Twin Peaks really explores quite deeply. And Donnie Darko attempts this and succeeds in a different way. Kind of a little bit, it goes a little bit more hard sciency, a little bit more trying to have a closed, neat loop, Whereas Twin Peaks does not have, some slight spoilers, does not have a neat conclusion at all. There's nothing neat or clean about it because Lynch is a lover.
Doesn't like
He
neat
doesn't like that. Yeah,
because
he wants you to
his
be puzzled.
experience in life is not neat, to
Yeah,
say
it,
the
it
least.
is not. Yeah,
He doesn't find it true to his own experience.
yeah.
And
So
I think that's also a valid interpretation of it,
yeah,
or a valid way to express that
now
viewpoint
might
or
be a
point of view.
time if I can just wedge it in here.
Hmm.
Um,
Please.
yeah, of so the movie, at least the theatrical version, starts with Donnie Darko waking up. He doesn't know he's on a hill overlooking where he
Yeah,
lives, and
same
he
here.
has his bike.
Hmm.
And he kind of has this Jake Gyllenhaal smirky smile, like he almost kind of half remembers a dream and how he
That's
got
actually
there.
when I recognized it was Jake Gyllenhaal when he smirked. I
Yeah,
was like,
okay.
"Whoa, wait! I know that smile from
Yeah,
Nightcrawler."
yeah, no, yeah, Nightcrawler. Yeah.
I know,
Um,
like I have to look it up. I was like, "Wait, am I going insane?" And then like, "Oh no, it is Jake
and
Gyllenhaal! Holy shit!"
and so in the theatrical version, many people have said that that's the smirk kind of implies that he kind of is almost like, okay, I got to try it one more time. That he's maybe done this a few times before. Um, so but it's not explicitly laid out. He doesn't have any shoes, as I recall. He just has clothes, like his pajamas basically, and his bike. And so he hops on the bike and he starts riding down to his house. And so you kind of get these cool shots of like the town and the surrounding area. Uh,
Very good establishing shots of the
yes.
characters as well and the family dynamic.
And as we were talking about, this movie has an outstanding soundtrack. I mean, it's it's
Very
such
much so.
it's such a love letter to 80s alternative. If you like anybody like Joy Division, uh
Oh
uh
yeah, Love Will Tear Us Apart plays at
Love Will
one
Tear
point.
Us Apart. Goodness gracious. The Church, Milky Under the Milky Way Tonight. All of these songs. I mean,
Mhm.
like this is stuff that just speaks to my
Killing Moon,
the Killing Moon, and that's the song that plays as he's
Echo
writing,
and the
um,
Bunnymen. I don't
which is
know
Echo and
whenever you want to
the
bring it up at all.
Bunnymen. And
Uh-huh.
I'm embarrassed to say because I like the movie quite a bit, and I absolutely love that song, and I hadn't really put it
That
to it.
that whole album is a banger. To be
Well,
fair,
Bunny
Nocturnal
Men.
Me is awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bunny
Bunnymen.
Men. Yeah. Um, I mean,
And
so if
Echo too kind of makes sense. It
Echo,
is sort
yeah.
of a dead man speaking out into the void and his voice
So
echoing out.
I mean, I'm just going to embrace the chaos because one of the things I like about Bulge is that he's Brazilian, and Brazilians are wonderfully chaotic and beautifully. It's a beautiful culture full of
Oh
beautiful
yes, very
chaos,
much
and
so.
it's very magical, realist, and it's not tied to these Anglo sensibilities. And I've had just enough Spanish sherry to kind of vibe with that. I'm getting some of the I'm appropriating your culture just a little, the Latino culture just a little bit.
Please do.
Yeah, well, I'm all for appropriation as long as you're nice about it. Um, this song, I know that you and I have been texting about this a bit, so if we can just shoehorn this in here.
Please do.
This song, if you like anything spooky, weird, uncanny, gothic, very gothic,
Oh yes.
this song it's like something that it feels almost like something that like Mary Shelley and Edgar Allan Poe had a weird fucked up love child and like wrote this song, but it's this beautiful song. It's a beautiful fucked up love child.
It could
Uh,
be a Sisters of Mercy lyric. Like
it
if you
could.
ignore the actual instrumentation of it, because it's
Yeah.
not at all Sisters of Mercy
Um
instrumentally. It
I
could be
highly
a Sisters of
recommend
Mercy. It's very gothic.
highly recommend everyone check out the actual, I might actually link to it here. The actual Echo and the Bunnymen music video is also incredibly gothic. I mean,
Oh yes, it is.
yeah,
It's
it's
the album cover. It's a shot from
yeah,
the music video.
yeah. I mean, but just like we've had some full moons as of late.
Oh yeah.
And
I think even yesterday, at least
yeah,
in the
yesterday
maybe
and the day
yeah,
before.
big
Um
beautiful full
big
moon.
beautiful full moon.
Killing moon will come too soon.
Every time I see it,
Fate
I just
up
think,
against your will.
yeah,
He will wait until
you give
you
yourself to
will
him. I
to
mean, it's
him.
just like
Oof.
lines in starlit nights I saw you so cruelly
You
you
really
kissed
you
me, your
kissed
lips a
me.
magic
It's a
world,
magic world. Your
your
eyes
high
all high
hung
all
with
hung like
jewels.
your skies all hung like jewels. Yeah,
Yeah, it's and one of the things too, I have to point this out because I when I'm not busy spurging out about pop culture stuff here, I do poetry is one of the things that I kind of do study, particularly medieval poetry, early medieval poetry in particular. And so if anyone has ever read Beowulf in the original, or poems also like Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, these
which is
are
awesome. You should read it, even if you can't read Middle English. Please do read it in English. The Tolkien translation of Beowulf, I've been told, is quite good. And
yeah,
Sir Gawain and Green Knight, I don't remember what translation I read. It was just
use the
what was
Tolkien
available.
translation. Yeah,
He's
Tolkien.
translated Gawain as well.
Yeah, his Gawain translation still alliterates, which is awesome. So
Oh,
to
I
bring
should
it
have probably read that. That
to
wasn't
bring
in
it,
my
yeah,
library. That's awesome.
you keep picking the wrong versions of things to
I
read
mean,
and
it's just
watch.
what was in my library, and I'm gonna be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, I know. I'm giving you a
It
hard time.
did kind of break my mind because I was very prejudiced against any story from before the 19th century. Because before the 18th century, really, the novel was not a real format.
Yeah,
Um,
to
and so I
connect
was
it
like,
here.
they're not gonna write in a way I'm gonna understand. And then I read Going in the
Well,
Green Knight. I was like, this is the most awesome shit I've ever read.
to connect
This
it
is
back to
hardcore.
Gawain and to Beowulf. So this song, it's not a strictly alliterative song, but there is some cool alliteration. So soon you'll take me up in your arms. So all
Arms,
vowels alliterate. Let's see here. Through the thick and thin. I mean, they're so cruelly you kissed me.
kiss me.
Yeah, you do get some alliteration here, which I just absolutely love. It's such a great song and it works
But
so well.
killing time unwillingly mine is
Yeah.
also very thematically appropriate for
Oh
this
yeah.
movie.
I mean, he has
Especially
to
as it play
sacrifice himself.
I will say actually say the placement in the director's cut is apparently different from the theatrical cut.
It is. Yeah.
I will defend that choice. I think it should have also been in the beginning and played towards the climax, which is where it plays in the director's cut. It should have played at both
Okay.
moments.
Yeah.
That would have actually been way better in the director's cut. That
This
would have been an
is
improvement. But it
totally
plays like 5 minutes before he kills Frank and before that.
okay.
And it really kind of works. It's playing in the Halloween party as he's
Yeah.
in the Halloween party,
Okay.
and when he
That's a
rides
little
away,
different.
it continues playing. That is works really well in the director's cut.
Okay, yeah, that's a little different than in the theatrical. I think Under the Milky Way by the Church plays in the theatrical version during the Halloween party.
There's another song that starts off the Halloween party, and towards
Okay.
the middle of it, after he has intercourse with Gretchen,
Yes.
uh, Killing Moon starts playing, which is
Oh, that's
also
different.
appropriate for
Okay.
Killing Moon
It
for
is
Gretchen's
appropriate, I
character.
guess. Yeah, I think that's Love Will Tear Us Apart by Joy Division in the theatrical
Joy
version.
Division, it does play as well. I think they
Okay.
switched between two songs. Love Will Tear Us Apart is playing when he opens the door for Gretchen, and and she says her stepfather has like terrorized her house and her mother is
Yeah,
missing and
stabbed her,
whatever.
has already attempted to kill her mom. Yeah, yeah.
Actually,
Oh,
it doesn't even. I don't know if this is different in the theatrical cut, but in the director's cut, her mother disappeared. For her house is
yeah.
trashed, and she
Yeah,
literally doesn't
that's the
know.
same. That's the same.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
He tried to stab her mom before the movie began.
Both in Protestant and Catholic version of Donnie Darko, that is the same. There's a
Yeah,
lot of we mostly agree. There's some doctrinal
look,
differences.
I'm not gonna let you give us the worst version of Donnie Darko
Oh,
here.
no, you chose the worst version. We recovered the light of the pure story of Donnie Darko. Don't you see? Because we were predestined to recover the true light of yes. Yeah, the world is truly symbolic, and this is we did not plan.
Maybe
Yeah,
if the
that's very
theatrical
funny.
cut was longer than the director's cut, and the director's cut was actually shorter and they cut off a bunch of other stuff and did some editing and made it into what you're saying, then you'd be correct. But I'll make okay. Let's skip off this point,
All right.
or else we're gonna talk about the Book of Tobit forever.
Yeah, again, the weird little bits.
we're gonna
Maccabees
we're
1
gonna
and 2 or whatever it is,
Yeah,
and
we're
yeah,
gonna be
yeah.
Maccabees 1 and 2, Tobit. I forget the other like 4 or 7 Deuterocanonical, but I forget
As
all
an
of them.
aside, the only time I have ever heard like any of the deuterocanonical books really read in a service because we don't use them in Protestant traditions. Like we just
Yeah,
don't.
of course.
We read them, but they're not considered scripture.
Hmm.
We read them, but they're not like you don't derive doctrine from them. But it's only ever been in Catholic weddings because there's the Tobit bit about the wedding and the ghost and
Uh-huh.
the whole fish exorcism business.
Yeah, it's like reading some church father. It's like reading Augustine's Confessions. Like
Yeah,
you should read
we
it,
would
but it's
view it
not
like
scripture.
we would view it like we would view somebody like Thomas Cranmer or Martin Luther. They have some really good things to say,
I
and maybe
just pick a
there's
church father, brother.
yeah, I know.
I'm being.
We
Oh,
have a
fuck
pretty
you.
we have a wider category of church fathers than you do.
Ah, fuck all of you.
We also accept the canonizations of we have actually, so if I can toot my own horn just a little bit.
Please do.
So Anglicans have our our saints, we have all the Catholic saints,
Yeah.
and
Well, all
all
the
the
Catholic saints up till like 1500s, right?
no, no,
I
we
don't
would
think you have
most
Saint Edith Stein, do you?
most
Like, or
yeah,
Maximilian Kolbe,
most
do
would,
you?
at least high church Anglicans would accept, yeah.
Okay,
Um,
that's interesting.
and we accept the Eastern Orthodox as well because canonization
Yeah.
works very differently for us. So it's a very
Okay.
different category than it is for you all. Which doesn't mean that saints don't pray for us. It just means we have a different, we don't have this you don't have to be proven in that like weird investigative way that you guys have to do. We don't, there's not like this
Yeah, you can actually. I will
a
say this
commission.
is a
Yeah.
slight defense of the Catholic faith, as I obviously must do.
You should
You
defend it.
can pray, you can venerate or pray to people who are not canonized saints. That's actually how saint investigations into
I
canonization
know.
start.
I'm
It's
giving you
just
a
that
hard
the
time. I'm
church
giving you a
cannot
hard time.
advertise that, like,
Yeah.
you should pray to these people without the due investigation and the due proof of it. But you
Well,
can absolutely, like,
that's
if you
just because
truly
you guys,
believe an Anglican was a saint, which is absolutely possible, and I do hope that all Anglicans are saints, as I hope that everyone is a saint. Very much a Dairy Hope kind of guy, which I hope that's a hot take and your audience will hate me for it. But
no, I have the same hope because I'm Tolkien
uh,
pilled, even though I'm not Catholic or Roman Catholic. Yeah.
you should read Balthazar. That would be an interesting discussion because his two little essays on it are actually very interesting and very short. Balthazar is the one who coined the term, but he talks up and he's very much in dialogue of Karl Barth.
I
He has
love
a whole
Bart.
book. He
I
has a
love
whole
Bart.
book explaining Karl Barth for basically beginners. And there's a
Bart's one of my
Catholic.
favorite theologians. So yeah.
I remember as a French Catholic who made the joke. Karl Barth needed a Catholic to actually interpret him and correctly and not make it fucking nonsense. I
Good
remember something
Lord.
like
You
that.
guys you just can't accept that somebody else had something good to say. It's so funny to me.
No,
It
no,
just
we're
makes
very
me
full of
laugh.
it, dude. We're. It's not only that we're Catholics. A lot of us are also continental Europeans. We're
Yeah.
very much full of ourselves.
Well, I
We
think it's
can't
just
let it
because
go.
I think it's because
Okay,
you guys I think it's because you guys are just big mad that there's like Saint Guilford, who was a very holy greyhound, and you didn't like
yeah,
that he
shut the fuck up. Not a saint technically. Can't. I'm sure he'll be in heaven. Can't
Do
pray
you
for
know
you.
what though? Can I give a riposte to that?
Please do.
Maybe
Please do.
he's not a saint, but he was the goodest boy.
He
And
was a
I
very
like to
good boy.
think that goodest boys also go and girls go up to heaven.
We will
So
meet him in heaven, but you shouldn't petition him because he can't petition because he's not rational technically, so you can't do that
my
act.
dog is rational. I honestly
Oh my god, we're not I won't get into fucking biblical anthropology. Okay, back to Donnie Darko
Donnie
and Killing
Darko.
Moon
Yeah.
and Echo
I'm
the
just
Bunnymen.
I'm just extending the lure as far as you will take it, sir. Yeah.
I would take it much further, but then we would literally never get back to the movie.
Yeah.
I watched the
Well, this is
shitty
the
version
danger with us.
for
So it's
you.
yeah, no, it's the danger with us. I knew it was going to be like this. That's fine. I'm okay. I'm okay with my channel being a little more than a little chaotic. I'm a, I will say I'm a much better guest than I'm a host. I do my best at hosting. I hope you're having fun. I
It's
hope
fine.
people
I
who
am
are
having a
listening
lot
are
of fun. I'm
enjoying,
laughing a lot.
it's about fun. It's all for fun. We're not making money. Yeah, so the movie, I mean, okay, so again, we're dealing with our different canonized versions here, but um
Yeah, I have the
I
Dewey
actually
Reams. You have the KGB.
I actually think the movie in the theatrical format presents this really struck me upon this watching. And I think I finally sort of started to get it upon this watching. This would have been time number 3, I want to say, for me. Um, every time the theatrical version. So I've never watched. I refuse to watch the director's cut for this exact reason that you're explaining. I think it really does present kind of a very, I mean, I don't want to say theologically accurate, but I would say it, I can jive with the notion of will as presented in the theatrical version of Donnie Darko, because Donnie
I don't
does,
know.
let me finish,
That's the thing. I
because
actually completely agree with you.
Donnie doesn't, Donnie, it's not that Donnie doesn't have a choice.
He
He,
could let the universe
he
end.
does have a choice. Well, and
He
here's the
could,
thing. And he
theoretically.
probably, it's implied that he has before.
Yeah, in your non-canonical
Well,
version.
but let me just finish my point here. It's
Yeah,
implied
please.
that he has before, because essentially, like, so I mean, I am not a Calvinist, and anyone who watches this show knows that. I mean, I love Calvinists, and I do like people like Karl Barth, who was technically Calvinist, but I am not really a Calvinist. I mean, yeah, humans are pretty. The total depravity I can actually kind of get behind, but I think we have a choice. I
I can
just
get behind depravity. I can't
I
get
think
behind
we have a
total depravity.
choice.
Just logically.
I think we have a choice, but I actually think that the problem, and this is how you can know I come out of a Lutheran background. Um, I think that we have a choice. We always have a choice to do good or ill. But the problem is that the problem actually is that we have free will. So I would never say, people are like, well, you don't believe we have free will. I'm like, no, no, no. The problem is that we have a will freed from God. And the problem is free will. And I understand that I'm interpreting free will differently there, but that actually is kind of more of the Lutheran and Anglican take, is like, no, 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 we do have a choice, but in having that choice, we make the wrong choice very frequently. And that is a problem, and we can't get over that on our own. And I think that
Yeah, no,
I
I
think
won't get
oftentimes
into
I
our
think
biblical
I think
disagreements,
oftentimes
but that is
I think
compatible.
oftentimes
Go ahead.
I think oftentimes Roman Catholics and Protestants fight over fake versions of each other's theology, and like are really ships passing the night and never really connect, because like Protestants just don't understand
Yes.
what like invocations of the saints and Mary really means. And then Catholics view a certain kind of like 17th century Calvinist. They project that onto every single Protestant, and
Oh no, yeah,
it's like these are both
for sure.
inaccurate
I mean,
discussion.
one of
Like,
my favorite
yeah,
modern philosophers is a Calvinist, Alvin Plantinga. He's a genuinely great philosopher.
yeah.
He has some problems that are disagreements, but man, find me a philosopher I don't disagree with
Well,
at some point.
and it's
But
interesting
one
that
of
you
the
have your
good
own,
things, very
it's interesting
compatible.
you of
Please go
your
ahead.
own free will brought up Karl Barth, and I've noticed this, that Catholics like Barth a lot. And
We
so
do.
and I like
Some
Barth.
of us.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's interesting. I think that that's a white pill. It's a place for, I mean, maybe it's like Catholics can find some happiness in Barth, Protestants find a lot of happiness in like Augustine, and maybe that's a place, those are two places where we can find some
We could,
beginnings
yeah,
of,
we can. You would
common
like
ground.
Hans Urs Balthasar. A lot of Protestants would because most of his theology is very patristic. He
Okay.
is
Yeah.
educated in the Thomistic background and very educated in the Thomistic background specifically. But I think he has gone on record as saying, if that was all I learned in seminary, he was a Catholic priest, I would have fucking quit. Basically, like I was bored out of my mind. Like I know it's true, I agree with all of it. It makes sense. Like I was bored out of my mind.
So
But then I read
I'm
like
going to alienate
Saint
all of your
Augustine,
audience.
Origen, Saint Maximus the Confessor, so on and
Yeah.
so forth. Like those guys were like they kind of lit my soul on fire. So he's very patristic.
Aquinas is very
Relative comparison.
smart. Okay, I'm gonna just say it because I can say this.
No, please do, because I will actually agree with you. Trust me.
Aquinas is very smart and not a compelling writer.
No, I agree with you. I think
Like,
again, I'm going to show a
dead
French
ass.
podcast, Contra
Just,
Gentiles.
yeah,
Jeremy, one of the co-hosts, one of the two co-hosts of
yeah,
Contra Gentiles, genuinely one of the smartest human beings I've ever met, has said that Aquinas's gift is not necessarily is not just systematizing things as a lot of Catholics seem to think. It's talking to autistic people who don't have an intuitive experience of God and
yeah.
convincing them that it's true. And that's the real reason he's a saint. Because
Well, and that's good. I think it
without
should.
it, Jeremy would not be a Catholic. Because he would not be convinced of it without the Thomistic
Oh my
understanding.
goodness
He would not be
gracious.
convinced of Christianity in general without getting a lot of a Thomistic
Maybe
explanation
I'm
from them.
not as autistic as I think I am, because for me, to get all personal about it, I mean, I was never
Oh no,
really,
I didn't need it at all.
well, I was never an atheist. I just wasn't a Christian for a while because I wasn't raised anything.
Oh, I
But I
was
was
an
like,
atheist
there
for a
was
while.
always something. Like there was always something. The world was always full of something. Like that was never a thing for
Hmm.
me, really. It was always something. It was just what was that thing, right? Like that was for me was the what was the thing. It wasn't like oh, I need to see proof of God. I'm like, what is that? I kind of could always feel that there was something beyond me that was important to figure out. And that's me. So that's
I
my
had that too, but I didn't call it God, so I called myself an atheist for a while. I was very interested, especially in the Hindus. I've read Adi Sankaracharya's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, which is very interesting, especially because it does actually get to kind of a triune God. It's modalist. It's a modalist heresy if you're a Catholic, in the way it's presented. But then again, it's written like fucking Sanskrit, so who fucking knows? Who knows how to interpret it? I
yeah.
don't. I sure as fuck
But
don't.
to
Uh,
just your hard right turn back to Donnie Darko. So
please do. I was gonna ask you to do
it
so.
seems like you and I actually can find some common ground in like,
Oh no, we can, especially because I was gonna bring up the notion of free
well,
will. When you're
well,
perfect,
it's because
Christ doesn't actually have the choice to. If you're really
well,
perfect, you don't have the
but
choice to
Don
not get the cross.
but
That
Donnie,
is
so again,
perfection. That is
theatrical
God.
version, theatrical version, Donnie, it's implied, and this is my interpretation,
Hmm.
fine, but let's for 2 seconds just roll with it. If Donnie has had the choice before and made a mistake or just outright refused to sacrifice himself,
Hmm.
he keeps getting sent back to the place of decision to do it again, to do it again, to do it again. So it's almost kind of maybe purgatorial in some
He
broad
it
sense.
becomes better that way because it's also more Christian instead of Christ-like. Because in the
Yeah, he's
director's cut,
being
it's way more
perfected
Christ-like.
because
Because in the same sense that Peter denied
because
Christ
yeah,
several times before he was like, ah, fuck it, crucify me. Like, you know what, fuck it. Um,
right,
where in the Catholic tradition, Christ appears to him as he's fleeing Rome and says, Quo vadis? Where do you go, Peter? I'm back there. That's where my people are. Why do you run away? And then Peter turns around and goes back, gets crucified upside down. That's where we get St. Peter's cross. Again, this is all tradition, not scripture. You don't have
yeah,
to
yeah,
believe
yeah.
it to be a Catholic or Christian, but just saying that's a
Yeah,
normal
I mean, but
tradition.
it's in, but let's, I mean,
But if that's a very Christian story, it's like, no,
well, but you can even,
you're gonna
you
be
can go
given
with,
this decision
let's,
to
let's
deny
go with
Christ
Peter.
several times
Let's go with Peter. I mean, Peter's problem is always that he's denying Christ, and it's really easy to judge Peter for
at the
that. Kind of
moment of
like,
decision. But
but I mean,
I think
we
he's
all do that.
the most compelling scriptural character. Peter and Paul are kind of
Peter,
the pivotal
yeah,
scriptural characters because Peter
Peter is
has
you.
the
Peter is me.
Peter is yeah, no, Peter is all of us. Paul
Yeah,
is in one sense the person we must accept. He's the guy who's been persecuting us, probably responsible for the deaths of women and children.
yeah,
And then he has this whole turnaround and he appears in your city and now you're supposed to welcome him. This you have to kind of interpret that as Christ saying, you have to put your money where your mouth is. Do you forgive him or do you think he's just a power player? And he's seeing where this is going to go. And he's just sort of, kind of optimistic about your cult. Like you
right,
have to face are you gonna believe him? Are you gonna actually forgive him like you've been instructed to, or are you not? That's the real moment of
right.
that's sort of how
Well,
in a sense, that's what Peter has to do with Paul. And that's
right.
why Peter is all of us. He has to
And
have this
so,
moment of decision.
yeah,
I accept him, and everything he teaches is right, and everything he's done before is forgiven, and it's not held against him anymore
yeah.
because he is forgiven.
I think for me as again a Protestant, but not. I mean, I
High
find great
church.
value. Yeah, I've ameliorated my stance on Calvinists because I do think that they're not a monolith, and there are some really good things that they have certain Calvinists have
Very,
said.
very smart.
Yeah, um, and I don't hate them. I just like to the kayfabe is that I'm against them, but I'm really not. In reality,
They
I'm against.
actually get a lot good right about
In reality, I'm
predestination.
just against
Catholics don't
the.
want to admit it, but they really do.
Well, in
We do
reality,
believe in single
in reality, what
predestination.
I'm really against is just the Catholic incursion into Protestant cultures. What I meant to say was, I
I'm
love
not against that.
the Jesuit plot is real. No,
Yeah,
but
and
I
it
think
will
that
succeed.
you already have. You've succeeded in your own church. That's the problem.
That is the problem. We
That
have to
is the
stop them. We
problem.
have to. Yeah, we're gonna have to have a new order to deal with the Jesuit heresy.
Yeah, and then you'll have to find another order after that order to deal with the next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get it. We'll get it figured out eventually, gentlemen. Trust the Holy Spirit.
um, if anyone's still listening, God bless you. But no, I think the thing that why upon this watching, the movie really jived with me is because of course Donnie has a choice, and of course he's failed in that choice multiple times. But God, the universe, whatever the force is behind the story in the story world, right? We would say
I will
God.
say this: it vaguely gestures towards God.
Let me
It
finish.
doesn't just say time
Let me
or
finish.
time itself.
Yeah,
It's
let
okay.
me
Sorry,
finish.
sorry. Please do.
The end of causality, the direction of history, uh, requires him to do a thing, and it will not let him not do the thing that it wants of him because it knows that it is the correct thing to do. That is a very like specifically Lutheran kind of idea of will
Hmm.
and causality and grace. It's like, of course you have a choice. You will often choose the wrong thing. God cares so much about you, he will literally keep giving you opportunities. And then oftentimes, if you're not taking the opportunities, will just absolutely make you in the most loving, fatherly way, not as a tyrant, not as some sort of crazy, like sinners in the hands of an angry God way, but like as a loving father will run out to you as the father runs out to the prodigal son and make
Yes,
you do the thing you needed to do.
the
Uh,
most moving
yeah,
of the of Christ's parables, by the way.
exactly. And so that I think that that's something that I mean obviously we don't get that from nowhere. We get that from you guys. We would say you guys probably don't emphasize it enough, but it's
No, I
shared
will
in
say there. Well,
traditions.
one of the good things of the. I actually think a lot of good things have come from the Protestant revolt, not Reformation.
Whatever, man.
Uh, but
Get over yourself.
but one
Get over
of
yourself.
them, despite the fact that the negatives have outweighed the goods, one of the good things is indeed the actual different emphasis. I actually do think the Calvinist emphasis on predestination, or at least single predestination, even if they do believe in double predestination,
Well, the
is actually very
Lutherans
important.
Lutherans
And I
have
think the
single.
Lutheran on the
Yeah.
philosophy of the cross, the theology of the cross,
Hmm.
and on especially on grace,
Yeah.
because you could especially see that on what I've read of Kierkegaard.
Yeah, you
That is very important. And from what I've seen in the Catholic world, it is underemphasized in a literary fashion, at least. Maybe it's not underemphasized in like a Thomistic manual or whatever, but who the fuck is reading Thomistic manuals? People are reading Kierkegaard, whether you like it or not. And
right.
that's actually very important. And maybe Kierkegaard probably would not have emphasized that if he'd been reading fucking Thomistic manuals, which again are very good and whatever, but he probably wouldn't have. That's actually
Well,
one of the good things. And when we reunite all believers in the Catholic Church, we'll have all those viewpoints. It will be very important to have all those viewpoints in like a
I mean,
1,000 years or
maybe. Yeah,
whatever.
whenever. Yeah. I mean, it
Whenever we
in
succeed with
the
our Jesuit
in the
plots.
in the eternal kingdom, that will clearly be the case because all
In the
bickering will
second
be put
coming,
aside.
when I can say, nah, 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 I was right, um, for eternity. In that, and I will.
Glad
That's
it.
1,000 years of purgatory added to me. But in
Yeah, I was
that
gonna say,
second,
wow.
but in the second, but it'll all be worth it. Just to say, for
Goodness
one
gracious.
second before we are brought to the eternal beatific vision before God Himself to say, I was right.
My goodness gracious.
No, you kind of have to make fun of your own arrogance if you're a
I
Catholic.
get it. No, I get it. I mean, I have to make fun of my, and I try to. I do make fun of my own dour, sort of self-deprecating Protestant depression. Is very much. I have to make fun of it because it really, I do embody an archetype for sure.
Oh, also, should I get into the metaphysics of it, and then
Oh,
you can
get
tell
into
me
it because
why it
now
was so
we've
bad?
kicked that.
Do you
Let's
have
go.
any idea about it, or
So
do I really
I
have to
only can
explain
go by
everything?
I can only go by the my interpretation of the theatrical version. So we're a little cross purposes here because you didn't watch that version, which again is my
Yes.
fault. Mea culpa. I should have warned you. I didn't think about it. Um, because in my mind, the director's cut does not exist. I've rejected it complete. It's anathema to me. It's not real.
Yeah, you've anathematized it. Yeah,
It's
I got it.
completely gone. Yeah, it's I shout my anathemas at it just like Eastern Orthodox people do. I shout them. It's not
Hmm.
real. No, I would say the metaphysics is something like you said, maybe in a slightly Newtonian sense, because of the fallen state of the world. I mean, we're already off path. right? We're already been knocked off the path by like
Yes.
expulsion from the garden. So like shit's all fucked up anyhow. And so God still works in history. God does not abandon history, but I mean, we are working at cross purposes, whether knowingly or unknowingly, intentionally or unintentionally, we are working at cross purposes with the natural path of history, which is towards restoration, healing, forgiveness, all the things that we
Yes.
want.
Which is very much what
Yeah.
not one of the reasons I actually thought the movie would have done better in the theatrical cut without the exposition of the metaphysics is because Donnie is explicitly the most assholey character you meet in like the
Yeah.
first 15 minutes. He's just a dick to his family. Like abs and you kind of like get it. There are like if you get those teenage moments where you've like fought with your mother or your sister or your brother or your or whatever. You fought with your dad, and you're like, and the moment they close the door and leave, you're kind of like you have this instinct to go after them and say you're sorry, but you don't. There is that sort of feeling in the first 15 minutes.
Well,
And
maybe it's
then
that
it starts, like the
maybe it's
real
that
parallel universe stuff starts.
maybe it's that I am a dick and I know I'm a dick, and I'm not saying it's good to be a dick, but I do think that some people are just disagreeable. You know, with the Jordan Peterson voice, highly disagreeable people. We exist. I think
But Donnie doesn't really reconcile with his family
no,
until
but
the
I
kind
think
of the climax.
one of the things I like about the movie is it shows that again, taking an explicitly Christian interpretation of the film, which the film is not
Mhm.
explicitly Christian, but we're doing it. I think it shows that God can and does work through dicks and assholes.
Yes.
Because I mean, the Bible is chock and church history is chock full of assholes. Like it's not like agreeable people are
No,
automatically good. I mean, you can be
no, not at
agreeable
all.
and be a monster, and you can be a total asshole and sort of weirdly have a sense of maybe like what God wants from you in the world. And I'm not going to say that I have a sense of what God wants from me in the world. I hope I do. I'm not going to say I do, but what I do know is that I'm an asshole. And I do know that. And I mean, fine, you know, I'm not, that's not a good thing. I'm not like proud of it, but it is kind of how I
But it
am.
can be used in a way.
Yes. And so,
One again,
yeah,
Christ rode an ass to do his most important work in
yeah,
Jerusalem, and he continues to ride asses today to do his work.
yes, that is true. And I mean, ultimately, I mean, to get all Lutheran about it, particularly Lutheran,
Hmm.
um, one of the great things about being Anglican is I can still use all my cool Lutheran stuff. It's totally fine because Anglicans dig that. You know, ultimately, and this is also just ultimately, you know, Augustinian. I mean, we in the end, we are the thieves crucified next to Christ.
Yes,
So which
you have
one
a
are you?
choice which thief
Which one are
you're
you going
going
to
to
be?
be.
You
Yes,
are the thief crucified next to Christ. So like, which one are you going to be? It's like,
never despair.
yeah,
Never despair. One thief was saved. Never presume one thief was not.
exactly. And
There's
so
a lot of that in the
there
movie,
is,
which
yeah,
is works better thematically without the fucking metaphysics which are
yes,
exposed to me direct.
yeah,
Again, I'm basically okay. I'm going to summarize the metaphysics very briefly, as briefly
yeah.
as I
You
can.
go ahead.
So basically, time itself deteriorates at some regular pace. It's deteriorated before. Roberto Sparrow was one of the people who dealt with it before, who had been in the situation of Donnie Darko before. She's the
Okay,
one who
yeah,
wrote the history of time. Very heavily implied. It's not explicitly spelled out, but very heavily in the director's cut.
yeah.
And there's been other people. And basically, time itself deteriorates and creates this tangent universe. And it creates this duplicate object in the tangent universe, which is the jet engine of the plane. And there always is something made of metal. You need something that can travel through time or travel through parallel universes, and it always needs to be made of metal, which
Okay.
the physics teacher exposits. And then there is a designated receiver, I believe it's called, or a living designator. And this person is charged with making sure the object gets back to its location. And it's always the person who is closest to when the universe distorts. So when the universe distorts, it was the jet engine that got duplicated. That was Donnie Darko. He was the closest person, in some sense, to the incident, even if he wasn't there physically. And then there are the manipulated living and the manipulated dead. So time itself or God, as the movie suggests, but
Mhm.
the text that flashes on screen just says time itself. But the movie suggests maybe God, and that's why I say Newtonian. The time itself, I'll just say God, then kind of guides literally every living person and even the dead in this tangent universe to get this person, the designated receiver, to put things back together. This designated receiver is also given certain powers. So when he puts an axe in a bronze statue, that's superhuman strength. When he manipulates, he creates a portal via water by which the jet engine goes back into the original world. That's basically what he is doing. The whole tornado over his house, that's him doing it in the director's cut very explicitly. Um, it's not just something the universe is doing, and he's the one who crashes the plane, who causes.
I like that. I like the. I mean, this makes me like the original version so much better because it's like
does too.
Donnie is participating in the divine plan, but is not really in control of anything.
Yeah, no. In the director's cut, he is pretty explicitly in control because they say the designated receiver
the director's cut
has telekinetic and psychic powers and superhuman strength and so on and so forth.
Good stories can come from ridiculous people, and it sounds to me like Richard Kelley's a total shitlib, but that's fine because the theatrical release is not explicitly shitlib. It's just a really good story, and it allows you to come to your own conclusion. So I obviously,
it really does sound like it was kind of saved in the edit, and yet the director's cut still kind of vaguely gestures, despite everything I've said, towards God. And the reason I compare it to Newton is because Newton, I believe, was criticized for his calculations in Principia, saying like, well, if your calculations about the orbits of the planets are true, and again, I believe his orbits were circular and not elliptical.
Yeah.
Someone said like, if they're true, the planets are actually going to fall out of alignment like every 300 or so years. And Newton's response, well, God will just like correct it slightly every 300 or so years. Yeah. And Leibniz made the famous remark that like, why couldn't God get it right in the first place? And this isn't like Leibniz wasn't an atheist skeptic. He was very much a church-going Lutheran, if I remember correctly.
He would be
very much also brought up in the scholastic tradition. In one of his books about talking about ontology, he actually recommends everyone read St. Thomas. And he's very much in dialogue about tradition. So he's not, he's not like a guy who's never read, a pre-modern philosophy book before. A very educated man. And he's like, well, God, why didn't God get it right the first time? Why does he need to correct it every 300 or so years? Which is a valid criticism.
But that's a very, it's interesting. That's a very Lutheran criticism. And then Newton's
But I think it is actually a good premise for a movie.
Newton's answer is also very, very Anglican. No, God will just correct it.
It's a good, but in a sense,
God will just correct it as he goes.
Again, theologically, in the real world, I think Leibniz wins out. But as a premise for a movie, I think the idea of God is allowing free will, but it's gone so wrong that he's gonna have to correct some things now. But he's still gonna give you a choice. But he's gonna bring you back every time until you make the correct choice. Like in Purgatory.
God allows free will because he doesn't instantly destroy sinners. Because from my perspective, free will is like, I don't view free will as a good thing. I'm like, I desperately, Lord, please take away free will. I don't want it because it's bad, and I keep choosing things that are bad for me.
There is a paradox of free will in a sense, because we have to say, I, at least as a Catholic, I don't know about you, Lutherans and Anglicans, but as a Catholic, have one to say God is absolutely free, but also that he would never choose anything else.
Right.
And yet he's absolutely free.
Right.
But our free will is a fallen free will. It is not the free will of God that he has. Yeah. And that free will, the one that we experience, the one that we will have knowledge of until kingdom comes, is indeed a bad thing. Not because again, rationality is a good thing. We're closer to God and we're made in the image of God because of that, and that comes with free will. But because of that, because our nature is fallen, or because the world is fallen, if you're Eastern Orthodox, that means that basically there is a corruption in how our free will is intended to work.
Right. But also the idea that like a force outside of you will come and work upon you to not do it on your own, as in the director's cut, but to participate as in the theatrical version along with it is very, I mean, that was like, this feels very Lutheran, even though it's clearly not.
There is a sense, which I kind of like the theatrical cut, in the sense that I really like the loop idea that you've
Yeah,
sort of espoused, especially because again, I'm a Catholic. I love purgatory. I love the I love waiting until you know. Yeah, I can't make jokes of it because it is really rather brutal. But yet, there is a good thing of purgatory in the sense that you are aligned of God's will. Like you're no longer like, I want to do the sin again. It's like, no, at this point, like it's over, dog. You're going to heaven whether you like it or not. You just have to suffer through this. But I do like that sort of cycles of guilt thing. Of
yeah.
that always did the wrong thing. But
Well, if
I
I
do
can,
also like that God that in the director's cut, the idea that God, this deist, not necessarily Christian God, gives you the choice. Like you can end the universe, and by golly, I will let you. I like there's sort of an implication he'll create the universe again, but he'll let you. He will let you destroy everything. You can trample on him all over the place. He will suffer the cross, and he'll just do it again. But he will let you destroy everything if that's really your will because he loves you and respects you that much. Your freedom, I should
yeah.
say, respects your freedom that much, despite everything telling you it's the wrong thing to do.
I,
If you choose to do the wrong thing, he will, with a heavy heart, let you.
I mean, that's a
I
very,
do kind of
yeah,
like the,
yeah.
but again, that actually is an interpretation that is possible in the
No,
theatrical
yeah,
cut,
it's
whereas
possible.
the director's cut very much only lets one interpretation slide,
Yeah,
which I don't like,
I like more open-ended movies in general. I like
especially
that.
when they're
Yeah,
weird. When
yeah.
they're especially weird like this,
Well, if we've
um,
talked about this, I've said
they
this,
can't
so I'll
work
say it again.
otherwise.
Like the king, the master of this is David Lynch. I mean, what the hell is Twin Peaks about? Dude, I don't even know, but I love it. Every time I watch
No,
it, I
it's
think more,
awesome.
but I don't know what it's about. But it's wonderful. Okay, I know a lot of what it's about, but I don't know what the overarching theme is because I don't even know if that's the point of Twin Peaks. I think the point of Twin Peaks is to go into mystery, right? Whether that's crime mystery, who killed Laura Palmer. I'm not going to spoil it
I
because
don't think Lynch knows.
do not spoil that, Bulge.
I
You know,
won't. I
yeah,
have seen Fire Walk with Me though, but I will say
yeah,
you. I don't know if you noticed. Fire Walk with Me starts with literally a sledgehammer hitting a
hitting the
television
TV,
screen.
yeah, yeah,
That was literally Lynch. I just hate it. Like I was actually forced to reveal who murdered Laura Palmer.
yeah,
Fuck
yeah,
literally everyone who was involved in that decision.
yeah,
It doesn't matter, you fuck. It's
yeah,
not, like he said this in an interview. He was like a very angry. It's the angriest I've
yeah,
ever seen him. It doesn't matter. That is not the
yeah.
point.
It's not what it's about. Yeah,
Um, and
but
it doesn't even matter if you know who it is in a sense because it's a like Lynch has said that a lot of his ideas come from him doing transcendental meditation, which is just meditation with like a meaningless mantra usually.
yeah,
Um, and then writing down whatever comes to him after he does it for like 20 to 30 minutes, whatever. And then he'll just like write a script around that and then film it around that. He
well,
doesn't actually know like the point. He just
yeah.
gets these images from just like getting very still and letting what comes to him come and then writing it down. He
Well,
said several times that if he doesn't write down his ideas, he feels like killing himself, which
yeah,
is
I've seen
so
those. I've
funny to
seen
me.
those. I
Very
feel that.
relatable.
I feel
Very
that. Yeah, I'm like
relatable.
I
Yeah.
feel this so hard. Not to compare myself with Lynch at all, but yeah, I think one of the things too, if I can make another hard right turn, whoop. One of the things too I really like about, like as I've said, uh, the idea that you can be haunted by a future that already happened,
Yes, that's awesome.
and that you can receive something like a prophecy. I mean, you and I have talked a lot about him, so I'm going to cite him here. Nick Land
Yep.
has said that prophecy, I'm quoting here, is rigorously intertranslatable with time travel. That's a direct quote from Land, and I do think that somehow applies to this story. That,
I think it's accurate. Yes,
yeah,
especially
like the
especially in
prophecy
this movie.
is a time travel prophecy. I mean, it's like objectively a time travel prophecy. And maybe, I mean, I'm not saying that's what prophecy necessarily only is. I think it's more than that, but I do think that like, right, prophecy is like, I mean, Jonah is called to, preach destruction to the city of Nineveh, and he doesn't want to, but then he does because of a fish and other things. And you can read the book. And then he's like, okay, fine,
A
I
good book.
preach. It's a good book. It's in the good book, actually.
Yeah, the good book. That's
The
why
good
I
book.
said
Um,
it.
and then he's like, okay, so like destruction's absolutely going to come upon you because in the future I have seen that's what the future is going to happen. God has revealed this to me, and people in Nineveh are like, we're taking you seriously. That is objectively going to happen. We're kind of already doomed, but let's try to just do this. Maybe we'll be doomed, and on the way out, we'll go out a little bit sad, and we'll have some, some a repentant heart, and try to turn back as best we can. And then God is like, okay, that future is no longer happening. And I'm not saying exactly that's how it happens, but if you want to, you know, in a literary sense, I think that's kind of what's happening
It's
in,
a conditional
yeah,
prophecy. Yeah.
conditional prophecy. And that I think that there's something sort of happening. There's something kind of similar in the movie. I think that's like this is like this objectively will happen, Donnie, unless you do the thing that you don't want to do. And so maybe
Yep.
in that sense, Donnie, I mean, we talked about last time you were on with Pig, how Nick Cage's character Robin is something of a wilderness prophet, and an unwilling prophet. I think there's also something, there's a similar kind of vibe with Donnie in this movie, that he'd like, in that he's
Oh yes.
probably failed multiple times or just not wanted to. He's like, I don't want to die, because who wants to die? Nobody really wants to die, right? But
Hmm.
sometimes you have, I mean, ultimately you will die. So you want the death to be worth it. You want it to be a meaningful death, as you Catholics would say, a good death. So,
Hmm.
yeah. And I don't know. There's something prophetic in the sense of time travel too, right? That this is, he's getting messages from a future that already happened, and that future shouldn't happen again. Um, if you think too, also ultimately, and maybe this is a way to kind of wrap it up, otherwise we'll just keep on going. This is just me. I'm not speaking as a theological expert, because I'm not. I'm just a layperson, but I like to think about this stuff. I like to read about this stuff. I like good art, like Donnie Darko, which I contend is a good movie. Um,
I think it's a
because
good movie,
because
despite the version I watched.
yeah,
I think it's very well made and very well crafted
good
in a
good art
cinematic sense.
good art leads you to good thoughts, right? If it's good art. What is heaven if not, well, as Tolkien would say, every bad thing becomes untrue, I believe is the quote from Tolkien. What if heaven is, if it is really the perfect kind of existence, then maybe it's an undoing of every single mistake and bad thing that has ever happened. It's all being undone and done correctly, finally, ultimately, for all, not even time, because time is gone now. It will be just be the way it should always be. And in some
Yeah.
sense, it already is, because there's the present and coming kingdom. It kind of already is this way. It's working itself out. We can see it through faith, working itself out in ourselves, in our neighbors, in the church, in the world, and all those things. And I do think that that includes animals. I am an animal. I think that dogs will be in heaven, is what I was to reiterate
I
before.
do think they will be in heaven, but I
Yeah,
think our interpretation of that statement might differ,
that's fine. That's
which is
fine.
fine.
That's fine. Um, but I think that that's kind of, I mean, I don't know exactly, nobody knows exactly what heaven will be, but we can maybe say what it will be like. And I think it will be like as if, right, the ultimate Donnie Darko, aka Jesus, goes through all possible outcomes and corrects all possible outcomes to make the only actual outcome, which is the eternal kingdom. Something like that. Now, that's just me riffing very poetically, mythopoetically, but I think that the
Uh-huh.
movie easily, if you're of a Christian persuasion, the movie easily leads you in that
And
direction.
there's something
Yeah,
as well to the correcting of. I really like of a theme of exposed of cyclical time. I think it fits the movie much better,
yeah.
especially in the Christian sense, because one of the things Augustine was actually concerned about was disproving the cyclical theory of time. Because if God, it was one of the issues was, I believe I'm gonna badly butcher this because was a very contentious philosophical issue at the time, but now it's like kind of gone to the wind. Um, but it was like, if time is infinite, infinitely back and infinitely forward, then how can God keep an infinite number of events in his head? There's like sort of like a paradox of infinity meets infinity.
Hmm,
And one of the ways people solved that was making time cyclical. And I believe, if I
right.
remember correctly, Augustine argued against this. Um, like he was making actually a very sophisticated argument that really only got brought up in mathematics again in like the 19th century of Riemann, about like different sorts of infinities and different
Hmm.
and like set theory. I actually need to.
Right.
There was a really good lecture on this. I need to send it to you.
Okay.
Very interesting. As a mathematician talking about the intersection between theology and mathematics in, I believe, St. Andrews University, which is a very good university in
Yeah.
mathematics. But he was especially concerned with this. That no, time can't be cyclical. You need to really like no. There are events and they change the course of time forever. It doesn't just reset when
Yeah.
everything begins again. It needs to be continuous. And in one sense, it needs to be forever altered by the coming of our Lord,
Right. Yeah.
by the incarnate Christ. That was really what he was trying to communicate. It's like, it can't be that way, or else Christ's sacrifice needs to be repeated. And
Well,
so does
I
the
think
fall of Adam. It
the way
can't
I
be that way.
skirt, because I'm so not a math person, the way I skirt this problem is I
This
say
is it's explained very easily in the lecture. I'll send it to you
time.
after the show.
I would
It's
say, yeah,
very
I'll have
good.
to watch it. I would say time is ultimately a result of the fall. And so time is very
Time
fake.
as we conceive it, you
Yes,
should say, because
but
Adam
I
still
mean,
did things and things took time to
yeah.
do.
Well, I actually
Oh, you
I took a
motherfucker. Don't
page.
fucking make me get
I've
into
ripped a
this.
page. I've ripped a page out of Land and have said, and I really do think the future is out to kill us all. The future is the monster. It's the future, and that's also why I love this movie, is because the future is the monster. The future is going to kill you, because literally the future will kill you. It's going to happen, guaranteed. The future,
Time is on that side.
it is on its side. The future's coming to kill us. So we have, that's is why, Christ literally divides time in his the incarnation is him dividing time and therefore breaking time. And time is connected to things like fate in that pre-Christian sense of fate. Whether it's like, like weird in Anglo-Saxon, right? Like the weirdness of time, the weirdness of fate is actually broken apart by Christ. And there's a lot of great early medieval poetry, religious poetry that talks about this that we can get into at some point in a future episode. That
Yeah, no, but I think
Christ,
I don't
Christ,
know if this is. Oh, go ahead.
Christ breaks fate's
Hmm.
power, and then makes fate his own. And fate is Christ's vassal. And now fate, which is causality, which is time, linear time, is now rounded back around towards Christ in a very kairotic sense. So this is the
I
movie.
agree with you poetically, but I can't go further than that,
That's
especially
because you're
without further
Thomas.
study.
That's because you're a Thomist and you're locked into the literal. So that's fine.
I'm not technically a Thomas because I think there's at least 4 of the 24 Thomistic propositions that I'm
Goodness
not sure I
gracious.
agree with or not. I
Why
mean,
hashtag
that's
why I'm
only a
not part
20th
of
century
Rome?
that's a 20th century invention. That's just like, if you're gonna call yourself a Thomist, you should probably agree with all of these. It's just like a
That's fine.
categorization
I
thing.
mean,
It's not like doctrine or whatever. You can
to
call
be
yourself a
fair,
Thomist whenever you want.
a lot of this is my weird ad hoc, in true Anglican fashion, my weird ad hoc
Uh-huh.
combination of like various strains of medieval thought.
No,
So
but I think it is
it's
poetically
whatever. Yeah.
correct in a sense, because especially because this might be complete bullshit. I don't know, but one of the first hard philosophy books I really read when I was like 16, is Albert Camus' *The Rebel*, which, by the way, has the best introductory chapter of any
I've not read that
philosophy
one.
book ever. You literally just read the first chapter. You don't
I've
need to, and the
read
first half. You
The
don't need to read more.
Plague and The Stranger. Those are the two I've read. So
You don't
yeah.
need to read. This is not fiction. This is
Oh,
nonfiction.
okay, yeah.
It's one of his philosophy books. I actually really like The Plague. It has one of my favorite quotes of all time, which is, people are often better than what they preach.
Yeah.
It says, I knew it. People are always better than what they preach, which is a great little segment. And the Memphis was actually opened me up even as an atheist to like it has a section where he says, well, the atheists, well, the Christians make a leap to assuming they make a leap they cannot prove to God, but the atheists make the same leap, but at least the Christians admit it. Where he kind of
Yeah.
sides with the Christian existentialists in the
Yeah.
the French scene, philosophical scene.
Yeah.
But in the Rebel, he without any citation, because he has like zero fucking citations in the Rebel, which is schizophrenic to a modern academic philosopher. But still, it's an awesome book, except for the conclusion. The conclusion's kind of lukewarm. But he goes on to say at some point in the beginning that Aristotle had the idea that the siege of Troy happened before and it would happen once again. But there's sort of this implication. Camus doesn't talk about it because he's an agnostic. but there is a sort of implication that time is now different, and that is different now because of the coming of Christ. Um, that the siege of Troy won't happen again. It would have happened again
That's
if
interesting.
Christ had not come,
I mean, I
but
think
it
it could be.
won't happen again
I would
now
say
that
to
Christ
riff
has
on
come.
that, and maybe then we'll really tie it up because otherwise we'll just keep
Yep.
going. I would say yes. I think I can vibe with that. I would also say time is always different based on what you do. Every single thing you do changes time, and I do like that Donnie Darko, at least the theatrical version, really shows that. But at the
Hmm.
same time, ultimately, those are small changes. Those are tiny changes. If they're bad, they do make the world a worse place. Like your sins do matter, but you shouldn't
Everything
despair.
matters,
But you
but you
shouldn't
don't need to
despair
despair.
because you
You'll
shouldn't
be given a
despair.
chance.
Yeah. But also your good works do matter. They do matter. Believe it or not, Protestants do believe that. They do matter.
Yes.
But the good news and the bitter white pill behind that is you're not going to be able to quote unquote fix the world. You should still do good works, even without apparent benefit, because oftentimes, because A, it's just the right thing to do, but there's oftentimes benefits that you won't see. And when you despair that your good works aren't good enough, congratulations, they're not good enough. But ultimately, it's because all of the things you do or don't do matter, but they matter significantly less than what Christ has already done. And that's the good news, is that all your bad, he's better than all your bads, and his good is much better than your good. Because if you start relying on the goodness of what you do, it pales in comparison to what you need to do. And you're never going to be able to fix things, even your most heroic act. And so maybe that's a thing where, like, again, at the end, maybe that's how we'll tie it up. At the very end, at least in the theatrical version, Donnie Darko sacrifices himself, quote unquote, sets time right in a very Christian way. Time still continues. There's still sin. There's still death. Still people in need of salvation. And God is still at work in some other way that we cannot see. We've seen one example of him at work in one individual who is called to be Christ-like, Christian, who is not Christ. He has not fixed the world because all of his family members will still die, but they live on and are not, and the bad things that happen in the film don't actually end up happening because of his sacrifice. And I like that. I like it's a very realistically hopeful. There's a lot of grace amidst sin. It made my Protestant heart very happy. It filled it because it's sad, but there's a sense that like he's finally doing what he needed to do, and it's not fixing everything. It's fixing some things. And that was what he needed to do because ultimately it wasn't Donnie's responsibility to solve the universe, even though that's what Richard Kelley went back in the director's cut and said. That's bullshit. It's just that he had his one thing to do, his important thing to do, to tie it back into our discussion of uh of of Fallen. I think that that's kind of that was what he needed to do. So yeah, I think the movie itself has so many different things going on. Um, it's just it's a fascinating movie. I highly recommend it for everyone. Again, hopefully you've made it to this part of the episode. If you have, thank you. This is what happens when your brain on autism. Um, Please make sure to check out Bulge. I'll put his details. I think he's back on Twitter now. On in the show notes. We should be doing more stuff upcoming here, more movie stuff. I think Bulge is going to pretty much be the movie guy from now on, as long as he'll show up. It seems that there's been an audio issue and he's dropped off the call, so I'll just wrap it up here organically, if that's all right, everyone. If you wonder why he's no longer chiming in. Um, like, comment, subscribe if you want to. Some things going on. We should have Fred back on the show hopefully soon. Fred from England, looking at some C.S. Lewis and a little demon called Screw Tape, which should be fun, terrifying, fun. We should always be careful when we interact with demons, but we can make fun of them. We should fart at the devil. Luther taught us that, so that's good. That'll be fun. And then coming up into Christmas time, that's Fred's British spooky season. So we'll be looking at some, I think, hopefully some more Charles Dickens ghost stories. And then also, friend of the show, Paz from Timeline Earth, runs the Scarlet Thread Society. People should check out the Patreon. I will be on a dedicated show once a month called the Enchanted Office Hours. We shilled that pretty strongly in our previous episode on Ghostbusters. We just recorded, actually, as of right now, the first episode for the Enchanted Office Hours, looking at the master English occultist John Dee and his service to Queen Elizabeth I. So all of those things are coming down the pipeline. Thank you all who follow and like this stuff. Hopefully, at least somebody likes it. I think I'm reaching more people, and so that's good. And yeah, check out Bulge on Twitter. I think he's back. I think the ban has been lifted. We'll see for Brazil. And yeah, I'll finish it there. Everyone have a great rest of your weekend or week whenever this drops. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Take it easy, everyone.